I always considered myself lucky to live in a quiet neighborhood where everyone minded their own business. The street was calm, the houses well kept, and my neighbors seemed polite enough. I rented a small home at the end of the lane, nothing fancy but comfortable, and I appreciated the peace it offered after long days at work. For months, I never imagined anything unusual was happening behind my back. But the truth was slowly crawling into my life, one tiny clue at a time. It started with small things, barely noticeable, easy to dismiss. A cup slightly moved from where I left it, the bathroom window open when I was sure I had closed it, my bedroom curtains drawn differently. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I was tired, maybe I forgot, maybe I was overthinking. But deep down, a quiet discomfort had started to grow. One evening, I returned home to find my living room lights on. I had left that morning in a rush, and I distinctly remembered switching them off. I stood there, staring at the light switch, trying to convince myself it was just forgetfulness. But something inside me whispered that it wasn't. That something was wrong. The next day at work, I kept thinking about the lights. When I returned home, I checked every lock, every window, every corner. Everything looked normal. Still, a sense of unease hung in the air like a shadow I couldn't shake off. I began to wonder if someone had been entering the house while I was away, but the idea felt ridiculous. Why would anyone do that? More importantly, how? My neighbor, Mr. Harris, lived alone next door. He was in his mid-40s, quiet, polite, a bit socially awkward but harmless, or so I thought. He often watched the street from his porch, usually smoking or sipping coffee. Sometimes, when I left for work, I'd catch him staring at my house in a way that made me slightly uncomfortable. But I brushed it off as curiosity or boredom. One night, I decided enough was enough. I bought a small hidden camera and installed it in the living room, angled to catch anyone entering through the front or back door. I felt silly, paranoid even, but something in my gut told me to do it. I left for work the next morning, locking everything carefully, and tried to distract myself throughout the day. But every hour felt heavier, my thoughts circling back to the camera waiting at home. When I finally returned, I rushed inside and went straight to the device. My hands trembled slightly as I checked the footage. At first, it showed nothing unusual, just the empty living room for hours. But then, around 2:14 p.m., the doorknob turned. Slowly, quietly, the door opened, and a man stepped inside. My stomach dropped. It was my neighbor, Mr. Harris. He walked in casually, like he had every right. He didn't steal anything. He didn't look around for valuables. Instead, he moved through my house with unsettling familiarity, touching surfaces, adjusting objects, checking the bedroom, even smelling one of my shirts like some kind of deranged ritual. I felt sick watching it. My heart pounded in my chest as anger mixed with fear. He wasn't a thief. He was watching me, studying me, violating my privacy in the worst possible way. I paused the video and sat there in shock. My home, the one place where I was supposed to feel safe, had been invaded repeatedly. The thought made my skin crawl. I replayed the footage again, this time noticing even more details, how calmly he moved, how confidently he walked. He hadn't just done this once. He had done it many times. I knew I had to confront him, but something told me not to do it alone. If he had the boldness to enter my home in broad daylight, there was no telling what he might do if cornered. Instead, I called the police and explained everything, sending them the video as evidence. They told me to stay inside and wait for them. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. They knocked on his door, and I watched from my window as he opened it, looking confused at first, then visibly nervous as they explained the situation. They asked him for the key, and after a moment of hesitation, he pulled it from his pocket. I felt a cold wave of disgust when I saw it. My house key. He had made a copy somehow, probably months ago. The police detained him and later searched his home. What they found unsettled me even more. Photos of my house, my schedule written on a notepad, detailed notes of when I left and returned. There were even small items he had taken from my home, pens, a mug, pieces of paper with my handwriting. Nothing valuable, just personal things. Things that made it clear he wasn't after money. He was obsessed. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I felt unsafe, the police assured me he wouldn't be coming back, but because I kept replaying the video in my mind. The way he moved. The way he watched everything. The realization that someone had been studying my life so closely without my knowledge. The next morning, I changed every lock in the house. I installed more cameras. I told my landlord and the neighbors. But the emotional damage was harder to fix. For weeks, every creak in the house made me jump. Every shadow looked suspicious. I realized that safety isn't just about locks and alarms, it's about trust. And mine had been shattered. I still live in that house, but I never look at the world the same way anymore. One simple truth changed everything. Sometimes, the danger isn't out on the streets or in dark alleys. Sometimes, it's living right next door, smiling politely, waiting for you to leave. And I learned the hard way that evil rarely looks like a monster. It often looks like a neighbor.